One of the biggest challenges that I had was the market's noisy. I didn't have a ton of time, and I really wanted to figure out how can I identify these big trends in ETFs, like what's really moving up the charts, what's actionable, and really what's moving the most today. And I think you're going to like this. So we want to cover three ETFs that have had huge moves today. And how would you describe these ETFs? I'm Scott Bennett with Mike Olafsson at Invest with Rules. Mike, what are your thoughts on these three ETFs we're going to cover?
Yeah, it's a wacky slate, Scott. One is a real controversial ETF. That's the first one we'll cover. Second one is one that I wouldn't have expected. And the third one is coming off the bottom. It's something that's really hot out there, but coming off the bottom, and we'll see if it can get some energy here.
Yeah, so we're in investwithrules.com. This is for inner circle members. We want to take you behind the curtain here. So we're going to, from the hub, we're going to go to ETF ranking. And Mike, you do like Casey Kasem a little bit, right?
So I didn't think you were old enough to remember Casey Kasem because I grew up with Casey Kasem. America's Top 40 Hits. Oh man, I used to love it. Yeah, you're old enough to remember him, huh?
Oh yeah, I'm in. That was out. That was I think my Sunday morning, Saturday morning. It was one of the mornings we had it playing.
Yep. That's what I love about our ETF ranking. I love rankings because it helps me to figure out quickly what's going on, where the strength is, where the weakness is. And so that's when we put this together, it was music to my ears.
So let's take a peek at the ETF ranking. First ETF we want to look at. Huge move today. MSOS. So a little bit controversial, very volatile. So this is not advice, manager risk, and all the fun disclosures that come with that. Ticker MSOS are US listed, like pink sheet cannabis companies. Some of them have very impressive fundamentals, but the challenge really is the fact that it is not federally legal, it's state legal. So multiple states are, whether it's recreational or medicinal. But if that does get turned over, then this is why it's a huge move today. So, what did you notice this morning on our Invest with Rules information?
It is what a wacky move today, Scott, where MSOS hit our watch list briefly this morning. So our watch list is dynamic. And if we have time at the end, we could talk about the watch list and maybe show a quick snippet of it. But our watch list is dynamic and is pulling in names as the market kind of moves. MSOS hit for maybe 15, 20 minutes and then bolted away. And the chart shows exactly why.
Yeah, and this is something where this isn't the first time that's happened, but what I want to share with you, so this is an Invest with Rules trend roadmap chart, and what it's designed to do is to take any ticker, stock or ETF, and put it and quantify it. What is the trend, short term and long term? And if the short term and long term are both in an uptrend, that gets a gas signal in green. And we're really simply looking for these gas signals is what we're after. So is this an attractive investment or is it more of a short-term and long-term downtrend, which we want to really avoid? So back all the way, seems like forever ago, April 2nd, we got our gas signal. We actually also got our confirmation green arrow on this day where it had a really big move as there's that kind of initial talk is this has been dragged on for years. Will this thing actually move in legislation to become legal or less maybe potent as other drugs? And you've seen it went from gas to a U-turn, and then it's on April 13th. That was your tell, and it's been really climbing. It got above the 200-day simple moving average 2 days ago, and a huge move this morning. So, any other comments on MSOS that stick out to you?
Yeah, let me ask you a couple questions here, Scott. So for folks who aren't familiar with our trend roadmap, I think the green for gas is pretty obvious, red for brake, etc. But let's go to that confirmation triangle again. What really does that mean? Just boil it down to the basics, if you could.
Yeah, what we're trying to do is so we're looking at a daily chart and we're trying to go even deeper to how do we find even more confirmation. And don't get me wrong, there's always risk and not every trade's going to work, but we're looking for kind of a signal within a signal, whether the market you think is fractal and it has multiple time frames. We're looking for a way to using a systematic process to run it through a lot of our kind of algorithms to say, hey, these deserve your attention. And that's why it's been on our radar since April and even this morning. But then at some point, you get these orange square, which we'll call overheated, which means that we would say be patient at that point. It's run up a lot. It was up 3% this morning. It ended the day up 19%. And it did this isn't the first rodeo. It did this back in December, and then it had one, two, three, four, almost 5 days, and then it collapsed. So this isn't new, and we'll see what actually turns out from the news standpoint, but that's why it jumped so significantly on our ETF rank.
Scott, last question for you on MSOS before we go on to the next ETF. So if, and once again, we're not giving investment advice here, but if you, Scott Bennett, were in MSOS and experienced today's move, what you would you be doing going forward to manage risk?
I would still be holding, and I would use what's called a trailing stop, whether it's manual or you want to automate it at your brokerage firm. And I would say at the very least, somewhere around maybe 430 or maybe even the highs. The reality is this could easily shake you out because it's so volatile. But I would put somewhere maybe on this close. That's where I'd put my stop and I'd look to raise it as time goes on. So if this does fall apart, I will at least have a very substantial gain. But that is how I would handle. Any comments there?
Yeah, I think you're spot on. I think the only thing I'd add is similar to how we handle our trend roadmap model portfolio. If we were in MSOS, which we're not in that model portfolio, but if we were, it's up so much now that I might be trimming, and a process would probably say, hey, let's trim a little bit because it's extended so far beyond the trailing stop loss point. But what you said is spot on, but just potentially a trim is the only thing I'd add.
Okay, I like that.
Yeah. All right, let's
So,
go. Oh, yeah, sorry, Scott. Go ahead.
yeah, so what's our next ticker you want to look at?
Our next one, going from the ridiculous to the sublime, if you want to say that, is uranium, URA.
Yeah, uranium jumped 25 slots URA, and URA owns, let's go to a chart here so we can look at it together. Its largest holding, 22%, is in CCJ Camco. It owns Oklo, it owns NextGen, it owns physical uranium. I drew a line here, and that's the beauty of the trend roadmap is that you don't have to be an expert drawing trend lines because the trend roadmap will share with you when the gas signals come. So it made a high on January 29th, similar to the market. It made a low on March 30th, similar to the market. This trade's very similar to the S&P 500. And you'll see a lot of these downward facing red arrows. You had a little bit of daylight, and then it's more downward facing red arrows back on a coast. But on April 8th, you got your gas signal. So short term up, long term up in regards to the trend. And then on April 10th, you got your confirmation signal and it's been off and running. You're now above the midpoint March 2nd, and if there's always risk, but it looks like it wants to climb to the highs. So
Yeah.
that's what it looks like to me.
Yeah, and you love trend lines and you've got that resistance trend line. I'm surprised you don't have the support trend line in there yet because I could see one. I could eyeball it. No need to put it in, but maybe next time we show we'll have that support trend line. But anyway, to your point, yeah, it definitely not nearly as volatile. It's volatile, but not nearly as volatile as MSOS. But what I like about this one is the signal was so clean. The gas, and then you didn't even have to jump right in. You waited a couple of days for that confirmation, and then it was off to the races. So I like how that confirmation kept you potentially from getting whipsawed in case it didn't work.
Yeah, and I could see it consolidate a little bit right here. You would sit on the base from October of 2025
Yep.
and then make your way as long as there's a huge need for energy powering data centers. And this is an area that is definitely underutilized. And it's been a rocket ship for a while. And then now you really have your setup. So here's your base, and maybe you get some sort of a handle coming, but this is an attractive area of the market.
And by the way, Scott, I got to say, I hope we have some dog lovers watching this because you could probably hear my dog in the background, my puppy. she's going nuts. So I think she's just excited about what we're talking about here. So I apologize for that.
You have a good microphone. I couldn't even hear it.
Oh, good, good. All right. So let's do the third one. Now, this one, Scott, it's the ETF representing, or one of them, there are many representing Bitcoin. We've had a pretty good track record with Bitcoin over the last few years with our model portfolio, but we certainly last year we got out of it when it started to decay and it's had a pretty bad run. But Bitcoin is coming off the bottom and it's up, what, 20 slots today in our ranking.
Yeah, so let's look at IBIT. And just from a trend roadmap perspective, so after a very large decline, which we'll call a break signal, which is a short-term and long-term downtrend, eventually you get these kind of counter trend rallies, and we'll call them U-turns. So the short term is up, but the long term is still down, and you're really waiting for that gas signal for utmost confirmation. But here's a chart of IBIT, and it formed a high all the way back on October of 2025. And you started to get some red confirmation arrows. It went from a gas to a coast to a break. And then finally, you had a little bit of liftoff where you got your very first U turn that failed, another two U-turns that failed, but this looks a little different. Now, obviously, this could fail, but you have this huge trend line support that caught January and then more recently, and you had a really nice gap up today. This is April 22nd, and this looks like it could really make a further run. Any comments when you look at the chart of Bitcoin?
Yeah, I think you're right. Time will tell, but this looks a little bit different. And so on those U-turns, in fact, let me ask you this, Scott. If you were, once again, not financial advice, but if you were to look at something on a U-turn, how would you typically position size it?
I would go smaller. That's how I would handle it. I'd go smaller. And this would be a hard day because you got on April 6th, you got your U-turn and it shook down and ended at the top end of its range. And then it regrouped on another gap up. And then you got a whole bunch of confirmation signals. I would go small if it were me. I would potentially look to add with additional confirmation.
Yep.
And just to think about it, like obviously there's always the chance that this doesn't work, but if you bring yourself back into this area of consolidation, that's a 15% run. If you went all the way back up to the highs, you're looking at about a 60+% upside to get back up to the IBIT highs. And then what if somewhere, if you were to draw a line underneath this consolidation area, maybe say, what's your risk unit? Let's say 5%. And that's a pretty attractive risk profile where, let's say, maybe your downside risk is in the neighborhood, as long as you have your stop and you abide by it, let's say 5-ish%, and your upside is really a multiple of that. So that's an attractive, a low value type of an entry, even though I'm saying the word Bitcoin. It's hard to say the word value in Bitcoin, but the reality is this is interesting.
Yeah, I think when you say value in this regard, it's more of price value, not necessarily intrinsic value if we're looking at a stock.
Yeah, that's a good
Yeah,
way to put it. And yeah, your
excellent.
stop would be under this consolidation area, which is the high of this structure over here.
Yep, excellent. There you have it, Scott. Three ETFs. It shows the breadth of what's going on in the market. You had the major indexes up today, and then you had things as diverse as marijuana stocks, uranium, and Bitcoin all up sizably and jumping up our ranking list. Although a little teaser maybe for a future video, Scott, not everything is roses. Some things fell today significantly, and we'll cover that in another video.
Yeah, sounds great. And again, I hope you found this helpful. There's no catch. We want you to do really well. If you go to investwithrules.com, grab your free S&P 500 ticker tool. You can see this is what a normal line chart would look like, but if you had your trend roadmap indicator on the S&P 500, you can just grab that. So hopefully it's helpful and keeps you on the right side of the trends. I hope this helped you identify some uptrends or things coming to uptrends, but please always do your due diligence, manage your risk tolerance. This is not a direct solicitation, just things for your watch list. I hope it was helpful, and I'll see you at investwithrules.com.